Maybe this one?
David, hi. You come in on the backstage.
You need to try it.
We need to
Maybe
wire you.
That's cool.
This one is the same.
Okay.
Can you see me better?
Yes, much better. I can see you much better. Yeah.
This background is better? I choose a beach?
You are still black, Etel. The problem is the light behind you.
I will put the light. Yes, I know, but what I can do?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Wait, I change to the other side.
Yes.
You don't need to see my face.
Of course, we need to see your face.
Here.
Yes, perfect. This is good.
I don't have space for my feet, but it's okay. I am on the other side of the desk. Okay.
Check. Jocelyn, are you okay with the seating like this, or do you want?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, we still have one speaker.
Maybe I choose blue. Like Frank.
Welcome, everybody, to the panel of Riding the Green Wave, Accelerate Sustainable Transport. If you're using social media, the hashtag is MENACW. I will introduce myself. My name is Roslin Jabour, and I will be your moderator for this session. Let me start by thanking the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for hosting the MENA Climate Week 2023. We are all gathered here from across the MENA region and from different disciplines in this incredible venue to drive the transformational change towards a greener future, a convergence of minds and expertise, all united by a shared commitment to address one of the most pressing global challenges of our time, climate change. Years have passed since the leaders of 196 nations signed the Paris Agreement and committed to limiting global heating to well below 2 degrees. Climate change affects every sector of society, and transport is no exception. This sector contributes to around 25% of the world's total greenhouse gas emissions. And after the COVID-19 pandemic, hugely it's affected the global logistics and transportation industry, causing supply chains to break down and some transport sector to collapse. This fact underlines how crucial it is to balance the social, economic, and environmental pillars of sustainable development to create a greener transportation network. Achieving net zero for the transport sector will surely not be straightforward, but it is absolutely vital if we are to reduce CO2 emissions. The big challenge, of course, but also the biggest opportunity for potential reduction of greenhouse emissions. The MENA region has not taken this challenge lightly. Many countries in the region have started to embrace clean tech, for example, a growing trend that encompasses various sustainable technologies and practices. But still, a lot needs to be done. Climate-smart transport policies, integrated planning and capacity building, investments in public transport infrastructure and services, enabling environment for e-mobility solutions, mainstream resilience in infrastructure investments through the asset life cycle, and also activities encouraging non-motorized transport options. We heard during this week about many interesting initiatives in the transport industry, indicating that transformation is underway, and at the heart of this change is the focus on sustainability. How? Different approaches, but one element can change radically the game is green procurement. Green procurement can be a powerful tool for accelerating the climate change transport in the MENA region by aligning procurement practices with sustainability goals, incorporating sustainability criteria, promoting renewable energy sources, fostering innovation, among many others to come. In this transformation, the role of the private sector is critical to bridge the financing gap, provide latest technologies, and bring innovative approaches for a low-carbon and resilient future. Here today, we will delve into the intricate web of sustainable transportation in the MENA region, examining the critical role it plays in our collective journey towards a more sustainable, eco-friendly future. Our distinguished panel will exchange about the power of collaboration and partnerships between the public and private sectors, the importance of the policies and regulations, the need for innovation and technology, the opportunities for funding and investment, the crucial role of the public awareness and engagement, and in parallel, the unique challenges that the MENA region faces so to make sustainable transportation a reality. Our panel represents diverse sectors and perspectives. They will share their insights, experiences, and solutions that promise to spark transformative change in the transport sector. So without further ado, let me introduce the panel and start this vital conversation. We have connected with us virtually Mr. Brahim Dajani, Practice Manager for the Transport at the World Bank, Ms. Etel Berazlowski, also connected with us virtually. Unfortunately, they are not able to be with us physically here. Practice manager also for procurement in MENA at the World Bank. Mr. David Ramos, head of sustainability for HSBC Bank at the Middle East and North Africa and Turkey. Mr. Elie Hello, transport procurement engineer. Mr. Jean-Louis Morcos, senior investment officer infrastructure and regional sustainable finance lead at International Finance Corporation, IFC, and Mr. Walid Jhoubi, senior procurement specialist at the World Bank. I will open the session with Mr. Brahim Dajani. Mr. Dajani, I know you couldn't be here in person, but we would love to hear from you on the transport sector in this very interesting session. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Jocelyn, and it's really a great pleasure to be with you today, together with the distinguished panel. A very important topic in a very important transition time. If I may, and with the intro that you have made, I'll just delve a little bit more on setting the stage towards sustainable transport in the MENA region. And I want to go back a couple of years when we at MENA Transport, we established a regional transport decarbonization strategy. And what drove us on a number of facts here that MENA is highly urbanized region, and with cities having the highest intensity travel demand that are responsible for a large share of GHG emissions. When compared to other cities around the world, MENA cities host 62% of the population, while others host 55% on average. Similarly, the cities are responsible for 60% of GHG emissions, with 5 of the MENA regions are among the top 10 per capita GHG emitters globally. You are in Riyadh today. Riyadh and Al Jubail of Saudi Arabia are ranked 4th and 5th as the most polluted cities on Earth due to their high industrial activity. That's according to WHO back in 2016. I'm confident that the situation has improved much more since then with the important policies and regulations and measures that have been taken over the past few years. In a nutshell, there is a need for smart cities, urban planning, transit-oriented development, and improved municipal services efficiency. To this effect, the transport sector consumes a significant amount of energy and is a major source of CO2 and air pollution in MENA. Just like you have highlighted, the transport sector causes about 25% of the total energy-related CO2 emissions in the MENA regions compared to the global of only 21. Again, these are the numbers of 2018 as we don't have a more recent one. And the transport sector share is about 25%. Like I said, while air pollution has been seriously impacting human capital, where it's killing about close to 300,000 people annually in MENA. And that dates back to 2019, and I'm sure the situation has not really moved much. All 19 countries in MENA region have staggering levels of PM 2.5 air pollution, and 100% of their population are exposed to levels exceeding WHO guideline value, the highest regional average in the world. As you can see, these numbers are quite significant when we compare MENA and MENA cities to the global situation. Transport decarbonization offers a pathway to progress towards MENA countries' average 21% emission reductions NDCs. The main targets in the different national strategies focus on public transport, vehicle standards, mass transit, and cycling and walking. I end with leveraging technologies, which is one of the topics that will be addressed today, towards supporting transitions and driving sustainable transportation through green transport, through green procurement. And these green procurement will entail transport technologies, including innovative vehicles, energy technologies, energy efficient solutions, electrification, support green energy transition through alternative fuels such as biofuels, hydrogen, and transition to renewable energy. Similarly, digital technologies will be important element of decarbonizing transport. Again, green procurement will be basically the pillar of achieving these important shifts towards sustainable transportation. With that, I pass it back to you, Jocelyn, and I look forward to the panel's views and the exchanges with the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dajani, for this very informative and insightful introduction and giving us a background on the transport sector in the MENA region. I will come to the procurement element in the discussion. So it's undeniable that procurement plays a pivotal role in sustaining any sector. And in our daily lives, we engage in procurement activities, could be on a smaller scale, when making choices such as selecting the milk to purchase, the type of bread to consume, or even when deciding on a significant investment like a car or a house. The significance of procurement becomes more pronounced, structured, and subject to rigorous regulations when it comes to development of public infrastructure, such as constructing roads or airports, or when facilitating transportation of goods. So with this, I will give the floor to Ms. Etel Berazlowski, World Bank Procurement Manager for the Middle East and North Africa, to give us a little bit of her insights on this topic. Ms. Berazlowski, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Good morning, speakers and Ibrahim and participants. It's my great pleasure to be here virtually. I wish I would be with you there. I mean, you, Jocelyn and Ibrahim, already said all, so I have, in fact, little to add to all the good references and thoughts and views that you brought to the table, including setting the scenario on where we are in the transport sector and the importance of procurement. But I think that this is a crucial topic. I am glad that this topic, green procurement and transport, have been included in this MENA Climate Week. So as already mentioned by Ibrahim and by Jocelyn, transport contamines, affects a lot the environmental footprint, and the same is procurement. Procurement contributes to the emissions on about 18% of the global emissions in the world. So in one way or another, green procurement and transport are really actors in contaminating, in polluting the environment and increasing the environmental footprint. So I think today's event aims at sharing ideas, experiences, explore ways to collaborate together, because this is about many parties. It's not about procurement, it's not about transport, it's about academia, it's about private sector, it's about public sector. We all need to work together to make this happen, to procure greener things, to implement greener transport projects. So, and as I mentioned by Ibrahim, transport consumes a lot of energy, pollutes substantially, so we really need to act on that sector to find ways to reduce the environmental footprint. As mentioned also, many countries have taken a lot of measures to reduce the impact of the transport, of the private transport. We saw in Europe, on many other countries, the rapid bus transit, transport that is more efficient, also better designed for the passengers. We also see cycling. We also see a lot of measures being implemented to reduce the use of private cars, which are the drivers for the contamination. But in MENA, we see little. I am in Egypt. I don't see these things happen, unfortunately, these days. So I think we have a lot to do, but also to bring politicians, to bring the policy makers, the awareness that this has to be in the agenda. In that respect, as I mentioned yesterday, in MENA, just a few countries include some sustainable procurement in the procurement laws. When you include in the procurement laws, you have the leeway, you have the space to implement in some way or another green procurement throughout the bidding processes. But there are a few countries that have done so after our assessment. So these countries are Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Tunisia, West Bank and Gaza. These countries have in some way or another, considered sustainable procurement, but just in the main framework, in the main law, not in regulation, not materializing in bidding documents on how to implement this green procurement in practice. And this is the big challenge. The big challenge is in the practitioners, of how to translate the willing of implementing green procurement when they are not equipped to do so. But also in the market, we need to see whether the market is ready to provide that kind of technology. So capacity building, as mentioned, is crucial to really bring awareness on that, but also to provide examples, to provide lessons learned on this all over the world, so we can move this forward. In this sense, as I mentioned also yesterday in the session that we have on green procurement, the World Bank is taking this issue very seriously and straightforwardly. So we have made mandatory the use of rating criteria in all large contracts for goods, for works, for non-consulting services. What does it mean? That we will not allow anymore to award the contract to the lowest price bid. There will also be a balance between the quality and the price. So under the quality, we can include some criteria to assess whether the contractor, the supplier, the contractor, for example, has proposed a methodology to implement the work contract in a less impactful way to the environment. Whether the supplier can also provide some innovations, different kind of batteries, different kind of use of energy when they produce the goods. So these rating criteria give us the opportunity to really motivate the market to try to innovate and to help in this agenda of green procurement. But again, we need to provide the market with also the elements. We need to provide subsidies, we need to create this industry that sometimes does not exist. And of course, capacity building, as I mentioned. And so this will be one of the areas that I think we need to work together. So I think this event will bring, I hope so, with the lessons learned, with the experience of all these speakers, awareness of the importance of green procurement and transport, which is a crucial sector. So I am very happy of this partnership with the transport sector and with all of you, and I'm looking forward to really tangible results in the way forward. So thank you very much for the opportunity to provide the opening remarks, and I hope you have a very good discussions today. And thank you for moderating the event, Jocelyn.
Thank you, Ms. Beraslawski. Actually, hopefully next time we will have you and Mr. Dajani physically here with us. Actually, your introduction sets the floor to understand better the green procurement, and it opens the discussion with Mr. Walid Houibi, the Senior Procurement Specialist at the World Bank. So we would like to hear from you a little bit about green procurement. What is green procurement? What does it mean? And why is it important for sustainable transportation? In what ways can the implementation of green procurement practices be leveraged to effectively address and alleviate the environment impacts stemming from transportation systems? Maybe you can share examples of some initiatives where transportation material, for example, and resources were used, recycled in a way that minimizes environmental impact and supports a circular approach. Mr. Douibi, please.
Thank you, Jocelyn. I'm very glad to be here today on your panel about this exciting topic among these esteemed panelists. It's difficult to intervene after Ibrahim and Etel, but I will try my best to answer your question. So we all agree that transport sector is among maybe the first sectors that emit CO2 at the global level. And procurement also. Public procurement is really one of the sectors that contribute to this. Public procurement, governments in the world, almost, they have something like 11 trillion US dollars per year spent through public procurement to buy transport means, to build infrastructure. So public procurement also is contributing to these emissions of 15% of maybe the global greenhouse gas emitted in the globe. And transport sector is the second sector among 6 sectors that were shared in 2002 in a study by the Global Economic Forum that shows that transport contributes by almost 1 gigaton of CO2 equivalent emitted in the globe. So if the governments do some initiatives to really make the transport sector more green, it will absolutely contribute to the efforts of the government to reach, governments to reach the net zero or to reduce at least the emissions. So the way to do it through public procurement actually to implement sustainable and green procurement practices. So sustainable procurement is about considering social, environmental, and economic dimensions as part of the way the governments procure their needs. Green is focusing on green procurement and on products and inputs that reduce the impact on the environment. And this is a good entry point to contribute to reducing emissions through or within the transport sector through procuring more efficient means and infrastructure through including several concepts of green in procurement. So this can be done through making or focusing on more sustainable inputs rather than cost, as said by Ethel. So now there are several approaches to do it through, for example, the rate criteria, as mentioned by Ethel, where the organizations or governments don't only focus on price, but on procuring more sustainable inputs to the transport sector rather than looking at the price. And this is, I mean, the way to do it is to focus on the life cycle cost of the product instead of just looking at the purchasing price. So it's the purchasing price, it's the operating cost, and the end-of-life cost. Some examples in the transport sector, as mentioned by Ibrahim, now the electric vehicles are coming and they are contributing to reducing the impact of greenhouse effect in the sector. More green infrastructure where, for example, as you mentioned, the building waste can be recycled in building roads. There are some initiatives. Yesterday, we had a speaker from Tunisia who said that now in Tunisia they are trying to use the building wastes in building new roads, which is a way to make the infrastructure recycle and reuse wastes to reach this goal of green infrastructure and green transport sector. There are some other approaches, like, for example, in some European countries, they are using some instruments. Like in the Dutch government, they are using what they call the Dubocalc, which is a software that they use to calculate the impact of the infrastructure on the environment. And it allows the procuring entities to reward the bidders who offer better solutions. There is also another instrument called the CO2 ladder calculator that also allows to really calculate the contribution of the inputs in terms of CO2 emissions and to encourage solutions that emit less CO2. So all these instruments and approaches can be used in several sectors, including the transport sector, to make it more sustainable, more green, and to emit less CO2, so that the objective of maybe net zero can be reached in the sector.
Thank you, Mr. Uhibi. I think your point regarding the cost when it comes to green procurement, we do see sometimes some pushback from a few countries on how to procure while we have to pay higher cost. But at the same time, we should be able also to see that this life cycle cost, or on the long term, the impact that would do on the environment, that would be very important in terms of mindset and in terms of moving towards this greener procurement purchase. The scenario you have outlined necessitates, of course, a concerted and substantial commitment from all stakeholders involved, encompassing governmental bodies, employers, contractors, suppliers, and various other contributors in the process. So while it is evident that some governments are actively pursuing policy and regulatory reforms to enhance environmental sustainability, the pivotal question raises itself. How can the private sector be effectively mobilized? So given that any business endeavors relies on financial support, commercial banks emerge as a pivotal getaway for engaging the private sector in this journey towards sustainability. So I'll turn to you, Mr. Ramos. You have worked closely with public administration and with governmental bodies. What do you think? This transition to net zero will require transformational change across many sectors and will require action from businesses of all sizes. So we do agree that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to net zero, and different businesses in different industries will face distinct challenges, but also they have opportunities. Everyone must play a role to reach and achieve sustainability. And the commercial banks play a vital role, critical through their customers by encouraging the private sector involvement. How is HSBC supporting the journey towards net zero in the transport sector? How do you actively engage and incentivize businesses to invest in and adopt sustainable transport practices in the MENA region specifically?
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here with such a strong panel and colleagues. I guess that the role of the financial sector is more of an enabler, right? So we were talking before about the need for policies, the need for green procurement policies, for green transportation investment. At the end, all of that will need financing, will need more funds that go into those more sustainable activities, that additional cost that countries are not willing to put in the table up front, so potentially there could be an option to be financed through our activities. But let me just take one step back, if you allow me, because I think it's important to highlight a little bit what is the importance of the sector from our perspective and the importance of it for us as a financial institution. So we have a kind of a survey that we call Transition Pathways that we've been doing at a global level in different sectors that is helping us understand what is the need for our clients, the different sectors that we provide financing to decarbonize. So on transport, we did a survey with 300 transport and logistic companies across 16 different markets. And the survey result came that 88% of these transport companies are saying that net zero is fundamental or very important for their operations and their business growth. So that highlights a little bit the importance already. But not only that, 9 out of 10 companies in the air and maritime space sector that net zero is one of the 3 priorities for them in the upcoming years, compared to 3 to 4 in the road and rail logistics. I guess the pressure is more on the air and maritime because of the higher emissions normally. In terms of CapEx spending, we were also asking, a quarter of the companies that we surveyed, they're still saying that they will spend less than 5% of capex in the net zero, which is something that I guess it needs to change. But we can see as well the models that the bigger companies are planning to invest more, as it would be logical, but the numbers say that 26% of the large businesses, they are actually planning to spend more than 25% of their capex in net zero, while the small companies is around 12% of them. For reference, these, what we call large companies, if those companies that have a revenue above $2.5 billion per year, and this SMEs is between 500 million to 10 billion per year. So what are the challenges that these companies are facing that hopefully we will be able to support them? But obviously there is a higher cost for those more sustainable solutions. They are saying as well that they struggle to find financing, which is interesting because obviously there is a lot of banks out there that they are having sustainable finance targets. So I think there is potentially a gap between the need for financing and the actual financing happening. We keep hearing in all of these similar events that the money is out there. It's just probably not there for the right projects, or the projects maybe they are not matching the right capital. So I think there is an opportunity in there. Coming back to your question, why do we care about this in HSBC? We have committed to be a net zero bank by 2050 across our whole portfolio of finance activities and 2030 in our own operations. Obviously, we cannot do that without engaging with our clients, engaging with those sectors that we are supporting. We have set already targets for some of the kind of related to transportation sectors. For aviation, we have already a target for decarbonization. It's publicly available. You can see the progress year on year in the HSBC website. And we are working on creating as well targets for decarbonization for shipping. So those are going to come, and then we're going to need to engage with those clients in our portfolio to ask them, how are you going to decarbonize your portfolio so I can meet my own net zero targets that I have by 2050? How can we help in there? Obviously, financing, CAPEX. We can provide financing. We can provide new innovative products to support that decarbonization. And we can also provide advisory services, but not from a kind of consultancy perspective, but to help our clients understand what type of financing is the most appropriate for any project that they might have. One example, specifically on the MENA region that you were asking, and I'm speaking a lot, but I'm coming down to the, I was trying to set a little bit the thing. One example is we supported Etihad Airways. They raised $1.2 billion as the first sustainability-linked ESG loan in global aviation that happened here in the region. They have targets. Being an ESG loan is not only around environment. They have targets as well for CO2 emissions, increase corporate governance, and as well increase the participation of women in the senior levels of the organization. And the way we encourage those is through sustainability-linked finance structures, where we are actually encouraging when our clients, when they achieve those targets that we have agreed on with them, and if they don't achieve those targets, then we will penalize them. So for this specific case, being $1.2 billion loan, the penalties could go up to $5.5 million, which is a substantial amount, I think. So at the end, we encourage indirectly to make sure that they achieve those targets with our support. This is one of the examples. We can go into more examples later on if you want.
Yes, we're coming back to more examples later on. Thank you so much. I think this is important from the commercial bank side to play a very vital role with the private sector and engaging the private sector in this transformation and change. And also it is important, and hopefully other commercial banks also will be doing the same role in the region. And with this, I will pass on the floor to Mr. Eli Hello. I would like to explore with you the challenges from another lens. So the need for supportive government policies and regulations to improve existing transportation infrastructure and incentivize new eco-friendly transportation initiatives. The importance of innovation and technologies in developing eco-friendly transportation solution, of course, that must be tailored for different national circumstances and contexts. We know also the need of financial resources and investment opportunities, both from the public and the private sectors. All are essential. for implementing large-scale sustainable transportation projects, and equally important, the public awareness and support for sustainable transportation initiative. What challenges do rapidly growing cities in the MENA region face in terms of transportation and urbanization? What are the challenges that the transport sector in the Middle East and North Africa in implementing green sustainable transport solution? And how to navigate the economic, security and political challenges that creates obstacles in the shift to sustainable transport? But also, where do you see the opportunities to advance in a greener transport sector, in a more energy efficiency to support more sustainable transportation?
First, I would like to thank you for this excellent topic and excellent session here today. The green wave, riding the green wave, well, we were hoping as transport engineers to keep riding this green wave after the COVID-19 had elapsed. Because during that period of time, we can notice throughout the whole globe, the footprint had shrunk because transportation had stopped, literally had stopped. Now, it's not healthy to stop the transportation movement, but that gives you an idea that if we can reduce, we can shrink. However, we came out of the COVID-19 with everything that we learned through the COVID-19, from telecommuting to digitizing to door dashing, as simple as door dashing has boomed during that period. We came out from the COVID-19 as if we had learned nothing. We came back to our old previous habits, jumping into our cars and not trying to clinch a bit, at least, of what we saw as opportunities. In the MENA region, if we look back at the real problem, the source of the problem, in my opinion, is that the abundance of fuel and gasoline available in the MENA region and subsidizing it to the communities is basically the number one issue. Number two issue, owning a car. The cost of owning a car, not buying, owning a car is very inexpensive. It's very cheap. Basically, you can just buy the car, pay the taxes, and then that's about it. So where I'm going with this, I'm not saying that we have to deprive people from their cars, but we can give people incentives to buy green cars versus buying fossil fuel cars. We see governments in certain places, they do give financial assistance to their employees to drive to work every day. Maybe because there is no infrastructure. Farewell. So we're not going to say that all of a sudden we have created an infrastructure for public works. But with a small action from governments, governments are the largest employers around the world. Yep. They are the employers of all the civil servants, employers of the police, security forces, and everyone in these employees do have cars. So instead of giving an assistance to the employee to drive a fossil fuel car, maybe double it and encourage him as an incentive to buy a green car if there is no other infrastructure available. And we know in the MENA region sometimes the environment is harsh. It does not work to have maybe bicycles or walking every day. But we can do this shift by creating the incentive. And governments can start with their own. Maybe they can help in subsidizing like they do with housing. They do offer low-cost interest rate for housing. Why not do it for green cars? I mean, we do the private market, banking, we just heard they have a lot of money, right? Maybe the government can put up a bit on the interest and make this change, asking these countries where they do not have really infrastructure yet, and we know infrastructure costs a lot of money. It's not that simple. It doesn't come overnight. Yeah. And especially you did focus on the security issues sometimes and politics. Well, then the government can just make few changes in their policies and regulation and then let the community decide and give them the incentives to go in that route. When we go today to buy a battery, you have the option of buying a regular battery versus a rechargeable battery. But the rechargeable battery is more costly. Yes. Then you always try to go back to the cheap one. Let's try to inverse that. Let's see how we can make the green product, whether a car or non-car, more affordable to the communities. I will stop at this. Thank you.
Thank you. I will turn on to Mr. Marcos. Mr. Marcos, how does IFC see the transport sector from the perspective of mobilizing resources and raising capital to facilitate the sustainability initiatives and help emerging markets green their transport sector? Could you share some insights on how IFC is supporting this process, and what are the strategies and mechanisms that IFC is employing in its endeavor to bolster and endorse this transformative process?
Of course, Jocelyn, and again, thank you very much as well for inviting me to this panel and this very important topic. The way I see IFC's role, the way I typically summarize it, it's putting theory into practice. We ultimately are an institution that provides private financing to projects that we believe are bankable. And it is important for us to ensure that they are bankable because our capital is scarce and we have to ensure there's an efficient allocation of resources. We work across the globe institutionally, and we have to be very selective about the types of projects that we finance to ensure that our capital is recycled and is housed in projects that make sense. So where does this leave IFC? So obviously the climate agenda is relevant to everybody. IFC is part of the World Bank Group, and all of our projects have to be Paris-aligned. It also means that we are consistent with NDCs, and in that context, we embed all of these practices in the projects that we finance. And just to give you some figures, so last year, IFC provided $17 billion worth of commitments, out of which $8 billion was in infrastructure. Within that $8 billion, roughly 1.5 billion is dedicated to infrastructure, and that's across the globe. And in infrastructure, we really invest across the value chain. So that's airports, that's ports, shipping, logistics, and so on and so forth. But every single one of these projects has to be Paris-aligned. But Paris-aligned means it is taken in the context of that country. So for example, if you look at the state of Jordan or Egypt or Morocco, these might be at different stages in terms of their sustainable infrastructure. And we take that into account when we provide financing in the transport sector. And how do we do this? So the World Bank obviously came up with its climate change action plan. And within that, we put together what we call country climate development reports. And that's an essential piece because it brings together the private sector, it brings together governments to find objectives that fulfill these criteria. And you've heard different points of view today. You've heard practice managers from the World Bank, you've heard the points of views of commercial banks, but you've also heard points of views on the technical aspects, procurement and engineering. So bringing all of these together is essential for us. And in terms of the CCDRs, the climate change development reports, 25 have been written so far. And over the next 4 to 5 years, the World Bank is going to be implementing a lot more. So in terms of how can the IFC support this, these initiatives, so we can provide advisory services and we can provide financing. So on views that would enable government to make a project more bankable. So that's what we call pre-investment phase. And what we do in these early stage projects is we invest a little bit of capital in return for either an equity stake or a debt stake later on in case there is project financing or corporate financing. And on the investments front, we are obviously very much equipped to do so. So we provide loans, we provide equity, provide derivative products, but also a term that's been used a lot since we started this MENA Climate Week is blended finance. Now, blended finance is scarce. Not everybody has access to blended finance, but we try to mobilize it where we can, where we think that it is relevant. So that's in terms of a summary of what we can do generally. And we work, like I said earlier, we work across the verticals in the transport sector. So ports, railways, airports, logistics, shipping, and so on and so forth. But the projects have to be bankable.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Yes, I do believe IFC, the private sector arm of the World Bank, we do work hand in hand, and now all our projects must be Paris aligned. So hopefully we can do some impact. And now that the annual meetings are happening in parallel in Marrakesh, also this topic is on the top of the agenda of the annual meetings. Mr. Douibi, I will turn back to you. Sustainable procurement, it often involves different types of risks compared to traditional procurement. And so what strategies and tools does the procurement sector use to assess and manage those risks associated with eco-friendly transportation procurement, such as supply chain disruptions or regulatory changes? So how do you see procurement professionals address this supply chain vulnerabilities and disruptions related to the sustainable transportation material and technologies, and what are the strategies that could be in place?
Okay, thank you, Jocelyne. This is a very actually important aspect of how to green the transport sector through public procurement. As you said it at the beginning, yes. Greening the transport sector or infrastructure in general or large projects, it's still something that needs to be well promoted, because I mean the way procurement is being done maybe or has been is being done actually in most of our countries is a very traditional way. This green dimension, this sustainability dimension is really new. So the main risk is how to buy this concept to the procurement professionals and to the policy makers first, because it needs strong commitment from the governments, from the policy makers to cascade it through the different projects and consider it in budgeting the different sectors, including the transport sector. So it needs first awareness raising. So and it needs to be tackled from maybe the environmental virtues angle of this approach of greening the transport sector. This will involve including maybe green budgeting in the finance law in the different governments. So the way this needs to be, I mean, of course, the risks need to be assessed in a different way. And now we are, maybe for the time being, it's through the different projects or investment projects financed by the bank, we are including the concept of PPSD. It's the Project Procurement Strategy for Development. And it's the best place or piece of documents where this kind of risk assessments is being done. But of course, the idea is to streamline this approach through, I mean, within the government systems, whether it is a bank-financed project or not. So the idea is really to start carrying out this kind of feasibility study or market analysis study to make sure that procurement will help the governments reach their development objectives. To mitigate these risks, so to mitigate the risks, it's a matter of awareness raising, it's a matter of budgeting, it's a matter of streamlining the practices within the public policies. Another risk, of course, since it is not yet in maybe the traditional way of doing procurement, it's logistic. It's linked to the supply chain. New products are not, I mean, maybe green products are not available on the, I mean, on the market like any other maybe common product. So the way this needs to be addressed is a different way. Actually, public procurement, you have the public purchaser sitting on one side and the supplier on the other side. almost without any continuous interaction. So now it's time to really work hand in hand. So the public purchasers, the governments, the organizations should first engage their stakeholders and work with them on finding new solutions, on finding innovative ways to green public procurement. Several now instruments are being implemented even in some of the MENA countries. We are talking now about innovative procurement. So it is a way to allow new companies, to allow startups to have access to public procurement, because the old fashion of doing procurement is to looking for well-established companies that have experience, that have large, maybe turnover, that have the capacity. And it is, of course, not opening the door for maybe newcomers or innovators to access this sector. So now there is this trend of innovative procurement that is being, that we are starting seeing in our countries, that really opens the door for this kind of innovation. So to summarize, it's still a new concept. It's still a risky approach because of the mentality in doing public procurement, because of also the perception that public purchasers have about sustainable procurement. They think that it is more expensive than, a green procurement is more expensive than a traditional procurement. This is not usually the case, because in sustainable procurement, as you said we think about the whole life cycle cost. So in several cases, it's less expensive than a common product or traditional product. So, and this, of course, requires policymakers to really come up with now new policies that make the sustainable procurement maybe the by default way to do procurement, because it's about, as I said, maybe not only sustainable, green, but we can more focus on sustainable procurement to include environment, economic, and social. So this is the way now the trend is being shifting when it comes to carrying out procurement to include green procurement.
Another question comes to my mind from your intervention. We do educate procurement professionals, but how to collaborate with suppliers and contractors to ensure that eco-friendly and low emissions technologies are integrated into transportation infrastructure projects. And I do know that the bank has launched an initiative purely on green procurement in 3 countries in the MENA region. And one of the objectives of this initiative is to identify a priority sector, and I do think that the transport sector will be one of them. But how to engage the supplier and contractors, and this is how Mr. Ramos has referred to the engaging in terms of clients and customers from different perspectives, from the commercial bank and from different products that they are offering. But how to do it with the suppliers, with the procurement professionals from the government side, working with the contractor suppliers or the other part of the equation?
Thank you, Jocelyn. This is a kind of supply development program. So now, for example, in Scotland, they have a very well-established what they call supplier development program, where the public purchasers have a continuous communication and a strong relationship with their suppliers. I mean, the public purchaser sometimes launches a procurement process without having any idea about whether the market will respond to its need or not. So this is absolutely no longer the way to do to buy green products. So the supplier development can be through continuous or enhanced relationship between the public purchasers and the private sector, where the public purchaser opens the door to the private sector to be aware of its real needs, where the private sector can innovate, can suggest, and this is, for example, what is being now implemented, or what the new procurement decree in Morocco brought to as an innovation, which is opening the door to startups, to maybe innovative bidders to come up with their ideas to the public purchaser or to the Ministry of Environment or the Ministry of Transport to suggest a project. So it's a matter of continuous relationship through, of course, the first enabler is the public procurement legal framework that should open the door for this kind of continuous relationship. The second approach is to put really in place a strong relationship or partnership between the public and private sector as part of the public procurement strategy or vision of the country. Technology can help. Now we know that the electronic government procurement is really very helpful in making procurement or the interaction between the public and private sector easier and more fruitful. Now we know that the artificial intelligence is also being really deployed in public procurement to innovate. So I think there are several ways of doing this, of engaging the supplier or the private sector, but I would say that, to summarize, that the key entry point or enabler is the public policy, where the government should open the door through the procurement or the procurement regulation or legal framework, and changing the mindset of the public procurement professionals in the way they interact with their suppliers. They should consider them as their partners, not as someone who will just come, take the contract, take their money through the contract and go. So this is key.
Thank you, Mr. Houbi. I do hope that in the MENA region we do get to a point where we will be satisfied with the intervention coming from the government in terms of regulatory framework and in terms of practices that will radically change, hopefully, in the very near future. Mr. Ramos?
So actually, no, thank you. You were going to me anyway, but I was planning to jump in.
Please, go ahead.
The conversation was just sparking some thought on that. I didn't think about it before from a public procurement perspective, but maybe it's some kind of sustainable or finance solution that it could be explored. So we've done in the past a few let me rephrase this. In the past, we've supported our clients on their own supply chain to kind of assess or advance in sustainability through their own suppliers. And one structure that we've used for that is sustainable supply chain finance. That the way it works, I'm not sure if everybody is aware, but the way it works, we use the underlying risk rating of our client, the main client. Let's assume we did it with Walmart. It's public, so I can say names. The first one. So we were using the underlying risk rating for Walmart, which obviously is a big international organization like us. So then we are very happy to work with them. But maybe it could be that their supply chain, especially down the line, maybe they are not really a client, or they wouldn't meet the risk appetite criteria for HSBC to be banking with us. But because at the time Walmart was saying, this is a key supplier for me, then we could potentially bring those suppliers on board and help them as well advance in their sustainability. And there is a financial incentive of that, because the way we would do it is we ask Walmart to evaluate their suppliers through one of the internationally accepted standards, CDP, whatever it is, and then they would tell us of all of the suppliers that they have in their portfolio, which ones are more sustainable. Those that are more sustainable, according to their own rating methodology, we would offer a financial advantage in the actual sustainable trade financing, or we could also offer term lending to make sure that they can develop, they can implement, improvement, or improve their processes in a way so they can actually become more sustainable. So this is something that maybe could be used. I don't know enough of public procurement, if I'm honest, to see if this could be a structure that could work, but yeah, something that I was thinking of.
This is great. This is great, actually. Thank you. Mr. Hello, I will give you the floor again, and I will pick your mind a little bit from your expertise on the ground, from an engineer point of view, working on projects, infrastructure projects. How do you see the response from contractors, suppliers, when you include environmental friendly products in your bidding purchases, in your bidding documents, in your purchases, and how do you see and do you see any pushback from the suppliers or contractors to be involved in such contracts?
Well, it all depends on the procurement aspect of that project. If the procurement aspect of the project allows the suppliers or contractors to provide such a product and giving, per se, we've never used the multi-rated criteria until now, but it does give an advantage to them, then they will come in, no problem, because they do have innovative ideas, they do have the contractors always strive at giving you the product at a less cost. But we know for sure, and we know it today, every day, we know that. Once you try to go green or energy efficient, all these buzzwords, they come at a price tag higher than usual. So the only way to leverage it is the procurement, is to put more on the quality rather the quantity itself. I was involved in several projects, starting with as simple as requesting. For instance, I'll give you an example. You can come in on a, let's say, a traffic project, a traffic congestion project, where we are installing traffic signals. As a public entity, you can come in right away and say, I want all my lightings to be LED. You don't give a chance for other types of product to come in. And there are many manufacturers in LEDs. This is already energy efficient product. You can put in a criteria there, but why bother with the criteria if you know this one specifically, long laster, doesn't use much energy, and it gives you at the very end what you want. So you can spec it right out, and you are not specing a certain supplier. In spec, you can do a lot, but as long as you go and spec it. But if you say, I just want a traffic light, red, green, and yellow, then you're going to get the cheap stuff. So you can go by the specification. This is where you give your leverage. Or if you want to do the life cycle option. But we have to be very careful about the life cycle option too. Because the non-innovative, what I call it non-innovative, the old tradition, it's a well-established market. It's very uncostly to produce parts, produce items. So sometimes if you do the life cycle costing on a fossil fuel car, it will probably come in to be cheaper. So here, maybe you want to go further towards, like they use, I always give examples of products. When we used to go buy a fridge, we go for a energy efficiency mark. Maybe you want to spec the energy efficient mark rather than just the cost, the life cycle cost. These are ways about procurement, and there are good ways. You're not targeting a specific supplier, but what you're targeting is the end product to be energy efficient. And once we talk energy efficient, then you are riding the green wave of transport, typically for such a project.
But when you do green procurement, do you see the same level of competition when you do traditional procurement?
Definitely not. It's still a new trend. And this is why we should be very careful when we spec things, not to narrow it so much as to, at the very end, you come with 0 or 1 bid. You have to be open on the spec a bit, because it is not an exact science. It's not a well-established science yet, as other markets are or other products are. But you can. There is no problem. This is why we are moving in this area of energy efficient transportation. We are moving slowly, but we are moving. But it takes time because we're still learning. Everybody is still learning. The innovators, the technician, technology, private sector financing, us, procurement, everybody is still learning. And the more you go through it, the more you're going to learn from your mistakes. But no, you can do it. Yes, definitely you can do it. And government, they do have to look broader than just a cheap product. Because in government sometimes you tend to have the people doing the procurement are not the operator. All right? So if you have the operator mixed with the procurement people can give the procurement guidelines and know-how, but the operator will put in his mind into the product he wants. Don't give me an item that will break down every day and it's cheap. Or don't give me a product that I have to put in gasoline every single morning. So the operator ultimately in the government or in the entity itself should have a say in the matter of what we are buying. When you mix the two, you get a good product.
Before I turn the floor to Mr. Marcos, I would like to hear from you on the contract management part. You do have green implementation. You do have the elements to implement in a greener way, but how do you monitor? How do you ensure that indeed what has been proposed and what has been innovated is actually implemented on the ground? And do you face any challenges in terms of implementation?
Monitoring is always the most difficult part. Monitoring is always the most difficult part. Even if we take the old system of monitoring social and environmental aspects, from as simple as checking the emission out of the construction vehicles or the fleet of the contractors. And contractors do not pay attention to the thing. I mean, they're in the business basically to pave a road. This is what they do. This is their bread and butter for every day. But so the monitoring is the aspect. And the way to do the monitoring, basically, the best way to do the monitoring is the third-party monitoring. To have a third-party monitoring on your project, roaming all the projects, not a specific one, and do these checks and balances and on-site visit and check the record keeping. Because once the supervision is on board and he knows there is somebody who's monitoring and checking, we don't know when, but somebody will come at some point of time and check our record, so it's better to do a good job. So monitoring will do the trick. From as simple as the construction vehicle that are on site. I'm not talking about the pavers, and these do have their own systems of checking. But the contractor fleet, taking the laborers every morning, bringing them back, trucks, other cars, they are a major producer of emissions. If these are well kept and well monitored on site, at least you can achieve that first step into monitoring the site itself. And then you can label it if it is according to the limits you put in or not. Usually construction equipment on site may not be subject to the inspection done by the government on a regular basis, or maybe infrequently. So do it on site. It's a good method to have it part of the tender document, part of the contract management for the project.
Indeed, indeed. Monitoring is an important part of the process and is an informative part of the process that will let us move forward in this journey towards the greener future. Mr. Morris, I will come back to you. I know that IFC and the World Bank have many examples in the region where we started this initiative and journey together. Can you please provide us with some examples of financing that IFC was involved in within the region to mobilize resources contributing to the transportation sector?
Sure, I will answer that question, but allow me also to add a little bit, because there are some very interesting points that Eddie mentioned that I'd like to expand on a little bit. But yes, you're right. So no, I mentioned earlier that we look at all of the verticals when it comes to transportation sector. I mentioned ports, I mentioned airports. So for instance, we helped finance Queen Alia's first PPP airport a few years ago. It was for a 25-year concession, a pretty significant project as well. The first PPP in the transport sector in the region at the time, really, really significant and large project. So we would love to replicate that in other parts of the MENA region. But more recently, and it's slightly outside of Middle East, North Africa, we've also financed ports and airports in Turkey. So the Fraport port in 2023, financial year 2023, we did $200 million debt financing. And that was, it had a number of climate mitigation targets and goals. So we helped to green the port and also establish practices to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And believe it or not, even with airports, there are pockets where you can still have a positive environmental footprint. So for instance, we finance, again in financial year 2023, the airport of Antalya, where we helped the airport to, or when the project will be completed, that is, we'll have a framework to help reduce the environmental footprint and help enhance energy savings by at least 24%, and implement what we call a leadership in energy and environmental design gold certification. So all of these practices, we like to implement them. But I'd like to add a little bit more to what Ellie's saying, because monitoring is indeed, in my career, so I work on the investment side, so bring us to commitment, but I also work on the monitoring side, and that's where you see problems, and you have to solve problems. But how do you help monitoring on environmental footprint? So I'm going to link your point to what David was saying about sustainability-linked loans. And that can have an element of third-party certification. So if, for instance, you have a KPI on a sustainability-linked loan that says we're going to reduce our Scope 1, Scope 2, or Scope 3 emissions, you'll have an independent third party that will come and monitor. And there is a carrot and a stick, because if you've met that target, then obviously there's a reduction in your margin. But if you haven't, there is a corresponding impact, which is an increase in your margin. So that is a way, I think, to help bridge the gap on the monitoring front, but also to incentivize private sector and financiers to really promote this agenda of sustainable finance. I have many more examples, Justine, but we're coming already to just 15 minutes after quite a few minutes of speaking, so I'll leave it there in terms of the next points.
Thank you. We are off very soon to COP28, and I would like to ask one question for all of you from your own perspective, learning from what we have done through this year and what we would like to see in the next year. From your own position, from your own sector, how do you see the way forward? What would you like to see in COP28 to being translated into acts and reality? What can be done differently or more, if I can, to accelerate this transformation towards a greener transport sector? Maybe I'll start with you, Mr. Ramos. Thank you. For us, it's a little bit of what I mentioned earlier. It's about the transition. I mentioned the example of Etihad Airways. We have other examples where we are supporting in other levels. For instance, we supported Cathay Pacific, not in the region, but we supported Cathay Pacific in creating their own sustainable aviation fuel program. So there are clients that can come on board and then they can somehow obtain certified, not credits, but certificates saying that their goods are transported with sustainable aviation fuel. And at a much smaller scale, we supported in Egypt, here in the region, a company is called Shift EV. And what they do is basically electrofit, they call it, instead of retrofit. So they basically take all trucks, all logistic fleets, and they retrofit them into electric vehicles, battery-operated electric vehicles. And they are actually doing that in an ESCO model, so there's no investment required initially for the client. They rely on the funding that we've provided them, and then they do the investment in that retrofitting, and then they take a little bit of
the benefit of running those trucks for a long time. So those type of models, I think they are growing. And COP27 in Egypt, COP28 here in the region, I think is just bringing the focus to the importance of this region and how it has to advance. Obviously, it's a challenging market in here. We all are aware that oil and gas is the base of the economy here, but at the end, we cannot decarbonize the current economy at a global level without bringing those sectors into the conversation. So I think it's important that is shining a light on the importance of the region and the energy decarbonization journey that the world has to go through that cannot happen without this region being supportive of it. So I would assume it's more of this kind of, I don't know how to say it, but maybe like the point of inflection where things are really scaling up in the region, and sustainability takes another dimension, and then after COP we see an exponential growth on activity around sustainability and all of that.
Thank you. Mr. Hello?
Well, I would like to see initiatives of public authorities and private authorities to lead by example. Leading by example will show the community commitment of these large, whether they are government entities or other large firms, that they are leading by examples by adopting what they're preaching for. So if we start with that, and then putting some goals, some achievable goals, doesn't have to be major goals, but some indices somewhere, and then disseminating these goals to the public to show that, yes, we can make a change. And we started, so now it's your turn. And then enable them to do that. In very brief, this is what I would like to see happening.
Thank you. Mr. Moros?
Sure. So it's a very open question, a very wide one, but it's a very good question because it's these type of questions that really, you're challenging us to think what do we need to see. So I'll answer that into a very ambitious one and a one that's perhaps a bit more achievable. In terms of a more ambitious target, what I would really like to see is the cost of externalities being embedded in the pricing of sustainable transport. Why? Because we were talking earlier about the balance between quality and price. And if you want to find a price, from my perspective, that incorporates the cost of sustainability, you have to incorporate the cost of externalities. And that's something that's very, very difficult because how do you price that? And how do you bring that down to the local population? But if you're able to bridge that gap and cost externalities, then it's a path, I think, that will bring you closer to the quality-quantity conundrum, which is a very difficult one. But that's a very ambitious point, and I don't know if in COP28 is going to be achievable or not, but that's what I hope. You see that in Europe, for instance, with carbon taxes. But maybe something that's not that ambitious is a bit more aligned to what Ide was saying in terms of governments having much more achievable targets that would enable the private sector to get involved and in turn, IFC to provide financing.
Thank you. Mr. Douhili.
Let me maybe borrow a statement that, or use a statement that yesterday was used by one of our speakers who is really a guru in terms of sustainable procurement. So it was Mr. Farid Yaker. So he said, we no longer have time, we have no time, more time to inspire. It's time to act. I think the way actually sustainable or green procurement is being presented as an option. It's okay, we encourage you to maybe to include more green or sustainable procurement practices in your purchasing policies and budget, and it helps you to mitigate this, to do that. I believe that COP28 is the right place to set a baseline for public procurement in terms of reducing greenhouse gases, especially that it is responsible of 15% of global emissions. So defining the baseline, agreeing on a target to be reached through public procurement, in terms of emissions reduction, and have maybe a roadmap or agree on a roadmap on how to put together the policymakers, the legislators, and the private sector, public and private sector together to work hand in hand in order to reach this objective of reducing emissions, among others, in the public procurement sector through green procurement or maybe more ambitious sustainable procurement.
Thank you. I will challenge you with one last question. What do you think, in one term, one word, the key success factor to make transportation, greener transportation, a reality? Mr. Ramos.
It's one
in
word.
One word.
I'm going to be very typical, but I'm going to say collaboration.
I would say social acceptance.
That's two words.
It's a hyphenated word, so it's hyphenated, so that's one
I know.
Yes.
And I would say courage.
Sorry, what was that?
Courage.
Courage. Nice.
Ownership.
Ownership. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your interventions, for sharing your experiences and your insights and expertise from different angles and from different perspectives. As we move towards a greener transportation, we do hope very soon it will actually become a reality. Thank you, and with that, I will close the session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Excellent.
Thank you so much. Thank you also for our virtual Mr. Berazlowski and Mr. Ibrahim Dajani. Thank you for connecting, and we do hope next time we will see you in person here.
Yes, sure. Bye. Thank you.